On the night of our wedding anniversary, Goo Corporation CEO Angelo's scandal of a late-night meeting with the popular actress Blanca hit the headlines. When Blanca came to confront me, she looked down at me with arrogance. "Sister, you should be more sensible. After all, love doesn't care about who comes first. The one who isn't loved is the third party." I couldn't help but laugh. She didn't even bother to find someone with a brain. Love might not care about who comes first, but it does care about propriety and decency. Moreover, you know better than I do whether Angelo really loves you. He actually tried to exploit my genuine feelings in such a despicable manner, attempting to control my life. But imprisoning an eagle comes at a price. Chapter 1. I am Monica, currently a full-time writer, married for nearly 3 years, living a happy and fulfilling life. When I received Angelo's call, my novel was at an exciting plot twist. Just as inspiration was flowing, it was abruptly cut off. My hands paused on the keyboard, and I couldn't remember the plot I had just thought of. Frustrated, I closed my laptop and answered the phone, unable to hide my annoyance. "Hello, what do you want?" Angelo paused, then spoke with a smile. What's wrong? Who made my Moni angry?" "Nothing. I'm working overtime tonight, just reminding you to have dinner." His deep voice on the other end was as gentle as ever. I sighed and softened my tone. "Okay, Angelo, your stomach isn't good, so remember to eat dinner too." I couldn't help it. My husband Angelo is simply the most perfect lover in the world. He can always tolerate my 18,000 flaws. Our love story is very cliché. He is the monkey king who stepped on a colorful cloud to save the princess. After the disaster that nearly destroyed me, he rebuilt my shattered world brick by brick. Meeting him used up all my luck in this lifetime. I didn't have a happy childhood. After my mother died in a car accident, my father soon remarried, and I was sent to live with my uncle's family. My uncle liked me very much and often said that my eyes were just like my mother's. Unfortunately, his work kept him busy, constantly traveling, so the task of raising me fell to my aunt. My aunt had a lot of complaints about this. Every time my uncle came home, I could hear them arguing at night because of me. Next came the crying and cursing, and the sound of dishes breaking. At first, my uncle's family didn't have children, so my life was still bearable. But after my cousin was born, my aunt's attitude toward me took a sharp turn for the worse. I wanted to be oblivious to the underlying messages, the cold stares, and the term debt collector. But an adolescent girl has the keenest sense of emotions. I could only do my best to swallow the half-cooked leftover rice and obediently wash the dishes. No one would pick me up or drop me off at school. The 5-kilometer walk wasn't too long or too short. I could manage it alone. Only that dark alley emitted a terrifying aura, reminding me of the alley where my mother had her accident. I once begged my aunt to buy me a flashlight. I braced myself and asked for money for the first time. "Auntie, can I have 10 yuan to buy a flashlight? The road at the entrance is too dark." "I'm scared." "Scared of what?" She cut me off, glaring at me. "I work myself to the bone every day, and the little money I make isn't enough to support your brother. And you want me to buy you a flashlight?" She glared at me, accusing me of being a wasteful ingrate and recounting how hard it had been for her to take care of me. This burden. "I'm sorry, Auntie, I shouldn't have asked for money." I quickly lowered my eyes and apologized obediently. I knew that if I didn't back down, I'd only face more intense storms. She was taken aback for a moment. She is like a punch hitting cotton. After a while, she reluctantly calmed down and took out 2 bills from her wallet. "Oh, thank you, Auntie. You're so kind." I cheerfully took the money and sincerely thanked her. Thankfully, Auntie had a rare moment of softness, but her next words froze me in place. "Go buy diapers for your brother." I looked up, and the sarcastic expression on her face was so glaring. I don't remember how I left the house that day. When I came to my senses, I was already standing in front of that dark alley. I forced myself to move my stiff legs, ready to run through the alley as fast as I could. Suddenly, something in the darkness tripped me. Before I could get up, a sharp pain struck the back of my head. The sound of a breaking bottle exploded in my ears. The world spun, and the light in front of me gradually faded. Before losing consciousness, I reached out desperately, but only grasped endless darkness. Pain. So much pain. I don't know how long it took, but I struggled to wake up from the darkness. The nauseating smell and heavy breathing in the darkness fermented, enveloping me in overwhelming fear and pain. I hated my blank mind, hated my stiff body. I hated that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't struggle to escape. Suddenly, footsteps sounded at the entrance of the alley. The faint noise reignited my strong will to survive, and I found my voice with all my strength. Help, help. But the sound was too weak, drowned out by the howling north wind. The figure on top of me realized I was awake and violently grabbed my hair, smashing my head against the ground. Once, twice. My cries for help were shattered, blood flooding my nasal cavity with a gurgling sound. But it was the thudding sound that someone heard. "Ah, Dad, come quickly! Call the police!" A boy's scream. Someone rushed into the alley, followed by more people. And finally, the sound of sirens. I finally sank into unconsciousness. I knew I was saved. Chapter 2. Moni, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm here. It was Angelo's voice. The tears on my chin hadn't dried yet as I looked up in confusion. It was Angelo. Wasn't he working late? Why was he back? His coat was still on, carrying the scent of the cold winter wind. Sweat glistened on his forehead, and his expression was anxious. I came to my senses and hugged him tightly. On the screen, the novel was still at that part. The overturned chair, the shattered teacup, the room in disarray. And there I was, curled up in the corner, my phone still lit, with the call duration showing over an hour. I knew it was another flashback. Once again, I had relived the painful memories of the past in a chaotic trance. I heard something break on your end while we were on the phone. You didn't respond when I called out to you, so I rushed back. He gently patted my back. I didn't reply, just held him tighter. Having you here is so good. 13 years ago, the little boy who called for help at the alley was Angelo. People saved me from the assailant and took me to the hospital. Although my life wasn't in danger, I developed severe PTSD. The illness tormented me day and night, and I repeatedly survived the terrifying memories of the past. The attacker couldn't destroy my body, but he shattered my soul. I could feel my vitality slowly draining from my body, turning me into an empty shell, the last straw that broke the camel's back. Sigh. This poor girl. I overheard the nurses whispering in the hallway. Isn't it awful? Her condition hasn't even improved, and her aunt already signed the settlement and ran off with her son. She abandoned her niece and husband. Shoo. Keep it down. Don't let the patient hear. She can't handle any more stress. I laughed bitterly. Under the bandages, my hand, with torn fingernails, was bleeding again. My aunt had run away. She took the settlement money after signing the agreement and left my uncle and me behind. I didn't understand why I was always the one abandoned. Why was there never a place for me? Why, among all the brightly lit homes, was there not a single light for me? It's better this way. I would no longer be a burden to anyone. The biting wind on the rooftop steeled my resolve, pushing me towards the end. The piercing cold was the only proof I was still alive. How ironic. In such a bitterly cold wind, for the first time in years, I smelled freedom. Mom, I'm coming to find you. I closed my eyes. Monica. Who? The feeling of weightlessness hit in the opposite direction as I fell into many warm arms. I turned around, and there was Angelo, along with the medical staff who had come to the rooftop. He had come to visit me but found my room empty, so he quickly called for help to find me. By a twist of fate, he saved me a second time. I looked at the worried faces of so many people and suddenly felt guilty. I'm sorry, I mumbled, lowering my head. Don't apologize. He interrupted me. He gently took my hand and placed a get well card in it. Sister, it's not your fault. I know, you're just sick. Don't worry. My dad can help pay for your medical bills. You need to get better soon. He shook his head. Winter has come. Can spring be far behind? There was a poem on the card. Suffering will eventually turn into the wind and smoke, like a grain of salt on the shore of coast. The writing was childish, but it brought tears to my eyes. I held his hand, as if holding on to an entire spring. Chapter 3. After being discharged from the hospital, Angelo wanted me to live at his place and be his sister. But I declined. When my mother was still alive, she taught me not to accept favors without repaying them. I had already received so much from him, and now that I was healthy, how could I let my benefactor continue to support me? With the help of poverty allowances and student loans, I attended school during the day and worked several part-time jobs at night. With my own hands, I managed to pay off my medical bills. I knew his family was wealthy, his father being the president of a large company, and that this money was nothing to him, but I couldn't take it lightly. Later, I got into a good university. Being away from the environment that held traumatic memories, my life gradually got back on track. In college, I began making new friends and also saw a familiar old friend, Angelo. He was 2 years younger than me. I remembered him as a playful kid who didn't like studying, yet he managed to get into the same university as me. Sister, I've caught up with you. He smiled, bright and clean. I'm an adult now. Can I pursue you? The afternoon spring sunlight cast small shadows on his eyelashes. My heart skipped a beat. This sun-like boy reminded me of the spring day after that harsh winter. Under his persistent pursuit, we fell in love. After graduating from university, we got married with everyone's blessings. They all joked that Angelo had hit the jackpot by marrying the goddess of our journalism department. Only I knew that I was the lucky one. If it weren't for him, my life would have ended that desolate winter night. After marriage, we were very happy. He took over the family business and became the company president, while I worked as an editor at a newspaper. But for some reason, even though everything was happy and perfect, and my life was smoothly back on track, my PTSD started to relapse. This was illogical. With proper treatment, my PTSD had been clinically cured by my sophomore year. I hadn't been subjected to any trauma, so why was it relapsing? I couldn't figure it out. Angie, I feel like my condition is relapsing lately. Angelo was taken aback and then hugged me with concern. How could that be? Is my wife under too much work pressure? Why don't you quit your job? I was stunned. I had never thought of quitting. Although this job was tough, it was indeed my passion. How can that be? I know you have the financial capability, but my life needs to have its own value. He was indifferent. What's the big deal? Even if you had no value, I would still love you. I was startled, not understanding how he could say such a thing. How could you say that? His face stiffened, realizing he had misspoken, and softened his tone. I didn't mean it that way. You know that. All right. Don't think too much. Just know that I'll always be your strong support. See, you're under too much pressure. Getting upset over nothing. I touched my nose, feeling a bit embarrassed. Maybe I had been too harsh on him. I shouldn't have taken it out on him. I didn't think much of it, but my health deteriorated day by day, constantly failing me at work. Finally, during a presentation, I lost focus while giving my PPT. The editor-in-chief looked at me helplessly. I'll keep your position for a year. That's the limit of my authority. She took my hand, speaking earnestly. Moni, you have a lot of talent. I really admire you. Young lady, don't carry everything on your own. Get well soon. We're all waiting for your return. I looked up and saw my colleagues crowded outside the door. My eyes turned red. Thank you, editor-in-chief. Thank you, everyone. I couldn't let them down. My condition wouldn't relapse for no reason. The cause must be nearby. A year would be enough time for me to kick it out of my life. Chapter 4. When I left work, Angelo's Range Rover was parked outside. Seeing me approach, he got out of the car to greet me. My nose tingled, and I wrapped my arms around his waist. I told you not to come. He affectionately ruffled my hair, comforting me. How could I not come when my wife is being bullied? Actually, I wasn't bullied, but I didn't say that. Sometimes satisfying his protective instincts helps maintain our relationship. I buried myself in his embrace, greedily inhaling his scent. Yes, yes, all thanks to my dear husband. Suddenly, I felt something was off, but I couldn't pinpoint it. Angie, I feel like you smell a bit different. Unknown sources of danger are the most lethal. The sense of unease grew stronger. and I instinctively tightened my grip on his clothes. What? Suspecting your husband of fooling around? He chuckled and ruffled my hair. Before I could explain my concerns, he spoke first. Because your husband is thoughtful. I replaced the camphor balls in the closet with natural camphor. The doctor said the synthetic ones are bad for your health. I sniffed. Indeed, it wasn't the same pungent smell as before. Instead, it was the fresh scent of camphor leaves. I awkwardly rubbed my nose, realizing I was making a big deal out of nothing. I was just asking. Let's go home. I'm starving. I let go of his clothes, realizing I had wrinkled his perfectly ironed collar. I was stunned. Since when had I become so reliant on him? Every step I took seemed to align with his wishes. Suddenly, I caught on to something but couldn't believe my suspicion. It couldn't be. It must be because of my recent poor state. How could I doubt such a perfect lover? I forced a natural sweet smile and spoke casually. When did you change them? I didn't even notice. I don't remember. Just did it when I found out the synthetic ones were bad. He replied casually, his expression natural, revealing nothing. I don't like this smell. How about we switch to lavender? I persisted. Sure, anything for you. His indulgent smile was still perfect, without a single crack, but my heart sank to the bottom, blinking 18 times per minute, a rising tone, and excluding himself from his words. All signs of lying. I hoped it was all a coincidence, because the alley where I was assaulted was lined with camphor trees. Chapter 5. After the camphor scent on my clothes faded, my sleep quality significantly improved. My symptoms didn't relapse again. Since then, I observed Angelo for a long time, but he was still the perfect lover. Maybe I was being overly suspicious. Feeling energetic again, I couldn't sit idle and picked up my writing hobby. Originally, I intended it just as a pastime during my break, but I actually achieved some success. After receiving several substantial payments for my articles, directors started contacting me, hoping to adapt my work into films. I was thrilled. Although Angelo kept advising me to rest properly and not overwork myself, I agreed, but still wrote many works and produced several web dramas, gaining a bit of fame. Finally, a renowned director approached me to buy my work. I was ecstatic and pulled several all-nighters. Finally, on an early misty morning, I clicked send email with trembling hands. Relieved, I lay down and sighed deeply, turning to hug Angelo, who was still asleep. Honey, see, I'm amazing too. In his sleep, Angelo mumbled something, feeling my hand at his waist, and turned over to hug me back. I felt a bit guilty. I had been busy writing, neglecting him. Despite his busy work, he still took great care of my daily needs. He treated me with utmost care, and I had previously suspected him. Enough. I had finished my work. It was time to spend more time with him. But something unexpected happened. The email sank like a stone. When I went to the production team, Director Wang's face darkened upon seeing me. I felt a pang of anxiety. He found a quiet place, opened a file, and placed it before me. Moni, judging by your writing style, I believe you are an honest person. I believe you wouldn't commit plagiarism, but I need an explanation. My manuscript had been stolen. Opening the file and reading a few pages, I was shocked. The plot, the story setting, were identical to my manuscript. Even the polished writing was better than my rushed work. Returning home, I went straight to my computer to check the email, confirming if I had mistakenly sent it to a third party. But the sent box was empty. I hadn't set it to save sent emails. I collapsed onto the bed in despair. At this point, I could only work a few more days. Chapter 6. My illness relapsed again. This time, it was probably due to the immense mental stress. That manuscript was already a piece into which I had poured my heart and soul. Now, with the setting and plot all needing major revisions, and with time so tight, I didn't even have time to eat. I wanted to hide it from Angelo. He has always disapproved of my overworking habits. If he knew my old illness had returned, he would be heartbroken. But he found out anyway. I had a sudden attack while talking to him on the phone, causing me to break a teacup. He dropped everything at work and rushed home. I already felt guilty, and now I felt even more ashamed. But, as always, he had no complaints. I watched his reassuring back. The broken pieces of the cup were already cleaned up, and he was wiping the tea off my computer keyboard. After drying the water, he turned on the computer to check if it was damaged. Good thing we chose a waterproof one. With how clumsy you are, we'd be buying a new one today. I laughed foolishly, echoing his words. Suddenly, as if guided by some impulse, I said, "Honey, can you check if my novel is saved? If it isn't, I'll be in big trouble." "Sure, let me see." He unlocked the computer swiftly, found the precise folder, and opened the file. Yes, it was saved automatically. All the blood in my body froze in an instant. I couldn't keep deceiving myself. I forced a smile, trying to keep my expression natural, and answered in the calmest tone possible. "That's good, thanks. Honey, never thought it would really be you." Chapter 7. I shamelessly went back to the production team. Director Wong had an understanding look on his face, as if he already knew the purpose of my visit. He didn't say much and led me away from the crowd. "I'm really sorry. The manuscript hasn't been revised yet. And here I am again. Do you know where this manuscript came from?" Before I could finish, Director Wong had already brought up the page. It was an email address for an open call for scripts, and the file was an anonymous submission. We can't contact the anonymous submitter, but in this situation, we can't use your manuscript either. You should think about if you've offended anyone. I stayed at home all day. Who could I have offended? Even though I had guessed the answer, I still looked at the submission time, trembling. It was the same night I sent my email, and the anonymous submission was 3 hours before mine. At that time, I had already finished the ending and was doing the final polishing. Then, the starving me was called to the kitchen to eat a bowl of noodles that Angelo had personally made. I closed my eyes for a moment. Angelo. Oh, Angelo. My good husband. Moni. Normally, I wouldn't show you this. You know the rules of our industry. But you were mentored by MS Lin. I trust you. I was stunned, but quickly understood who MS Lin was. My boss, editor-in-chief Rose. My eyes began to well up. I had already left, but my family at the newspaper still shielded me in this way. I had planned to finish handing over the scripts and then return to my position, but now it seemed that some people and some things needed to be dealt with. Thank you. I will handle the manuscript issue in the next few days. Chapter 8. Camphor Trees. Anonymous sender. How much more is there that I haven't discovered? My thoughts were in turmoil, and details I had never noticed before started to become clear. Don't go to work. You don't need to prove anything, even if you have no value. I'll still love you. See, I told you not to write those things. You got sick from overworking, didn't you? How long has it been since you spent time with me? Is it all for this lousy job that doesn't even pay well? You. Only I can tolerate such a bad temper. These affectionate, gentle, and seemingly romantic words all came from my perfect lover. Little by little, they dulled my senses, cut off my future, and trapped me in this warm, enclosed glass house. I thought of a manipulation technique. Pick-up artist. I was grateful that I was clear-headed and rational enough. If I had obeyed from the start, quit my job, and given up writing, I shudder to think, what kind of canary would I have become? Cold sweat broke out all over me. He was willing to reopen my wounds, break my wings with his own hands, all for his selfish desires, all while wearing that gentle and caring perfect mask, glossing over a love dripping with blood. Perhaps I never really knew the real Angelo. A dull ache spread in my heart. My nose tingled, but I forced it down. When did it start? With his meticulousness. The slip-ups I noticed were probably just the tip of the iceberg. He could do such horrifying things just to keep me by his side. What would he do if I asked for a divorce? I didn't dare to think further. To write. I definitely couldn't stay at home. I grabbed my laptop and headed straight to the library. The change of environment indeed sparked my creativity. I breathed a long sigh of relief and was about to hit send when I paused. A thought formed in my mind. I stood up and found the librarian, ignoring his puzzled look. I borrowed the book I needed. The Art of Flirt. Know your enemy and yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without defeat. I seemed to have found a way out. If an amicable divorce was impossible, what about a litigated divorce? Chapter 9. Closing the book. I realized it was already completely dark outside. I took a deep breath and pushed the nauseating so-called techniques out of my mind for the time being. I fished out my card holder and retrieved the now yellowed card. Suffering will eventually turn into the wind and smoke, like a grain of salt on the shore of coast. I tore it into pieces. This gaslighting scam, using a deceitful mirage to enslave genuine feelings, has dragged so many people into an abyss from which there's no escape. Pretend to be a heartbroken wanderer, act like a successful emperor, or be a romantic poet. Ridiculous. It turns out a person doesn't just suddenly become rotten. Even when he was that young, he knew how to manipulate others' emotions. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it, seeing dozens of missed calls. I chuckled and turned off the screen. I no longer worried about alerting him. There was no need to pretend anymore. What I wanted now was for him to lose his temper and reveal his true nature. He would misjudge the situation, escalating his psychological manipulation. Following those so-called template routines, he would make the appearance of a third party create a sense of crisis in our marriage. Then, according to the plan, I would sincerely apologize and atone. No, he would be the one at fault in our marriage. If his target were truly a devout follower, he might have succeeded. I would be crying and begging for his forgiveness, pleading for him to stay. But his plans would ultimately fail. I only loved the wrong person, but I wasn't foolish enough to be completely brainwashed. He dreamed of turning an eagle into a canary, which is like trying to draw water with a bamboo basket. I knew Goo Corporation's legal team wasn't just for show, so I had to take this gamble, to lead him into a trap. Once he was deemed the one at fault, no matter how powerful his legal team was, they wouldn't be able to bind a penniless ex-wife to their CEO. How the assets were divided didn't matter. I never coveted a single penny from Goo Corporation. Everything I had was earned by my own hands. 3 years was a long time, but it wasn't my whole life. Freedom is my bottom line. Even if money is spent in a flash, it can still be earned again. Chapter 10. When I returned home, Angelo was still awake. Turning on the light, I was startled to see him sitting in the living room. "What are you doing? You scared me." He looked up, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled. It seemed he hadn't slept well while I was away. "Where have you been? Not answering your phone. Not coming home." Still that same affectionate look, that worried tone. But this time, I didn't miss the trace of ruthlessness in his eyes. How laughable. If love can be faked, how much of this concern is real? I feigned innocence, hitting him where it hurt. I was revising my manuscript. "Your wife is now successful and famous." Sure enough, he scratched his head irritably, the affectionate look showing a crack. He couldn't tolerate his plaything challenging his authority. Does he love me? I don't know. All I know is that, to him, I am just an object he wants to possess at all costs. Why bother with that useless stuff? Don't I earn enough for you to spend? But I don't want to spend your money. I casually plucked a tulip from the vase. The scent of these flowers, when smelled for too long, causes poisoning, dizziness, and nausea, preventing me from concentrating on writing. But these symptoms I often mistook for PTSD physical symptoms. No wonder my writing efficiency improved so much just by changing the environment. I only realized it now. I tore off the petals one by one, smiling wildly, provoking him. Finally, as his expression began to crack, I threw out the bait. "Why haven't you changed to roses? Our 3rd anniversary is coming up." He paused, then showed a barely noticeable playful smile. "Got him. Although I'm now a bit famous and can stand on equal footing with you, don't worry. I won't abandon my husband." I smiled mischievously, adding fuel to the fire. "Don't work overtime on our anniversary. I'll be waiting for you to come home. Angelo, don't let me down. You don't need me to teach you how to deal with a prey that's slipping from your control, do you?" "Okay." He smiled, his gentle look returned. "But you should stop writing that novel. A woman should take care of her family." The snake revealed its fangs. The conversation finally reached the point. "There aren't so many virtuous women. You can't find another one, can you?" He looked at me, and I pretended to be smug. After a long while, I feigned compliance. Don't really find another one. I can't live without you, my dear husband. Not until he showed a satisfied smile did I slap my laptop onto the table. Make me a bowl of noodles. I have just a bit left to write. The more chips on the table, the better. As usual, I ate the noodles and returned to the computer. Angelo had already gone to bed. My heart was pounding as I trembled and brought up the hidden page. Saving the meeting video. I looked at the video of the meeting host, silently asking a question. He blinked in response, answering my inquiry. I exhaled deeply, feeling relieved. It worked. Earlier, I had printed a copy of my draft and sent it by postal service to Editor-in-Chief Lynn. I called her, asking her to keep it sealed. She immediately understood my situation. During this video meeting, we synchronized the screen recording of his operations on my computer and his face. Whether it was the draft stamped with the company seal or this video, both were ironclad evidence of his plagiarism. One of them would surely serve as evidence in court. Chapter 11. Just as I expected, he found another woman. Even heaven is helping me. And the woman he found is a familiar face. The popular singer Blanca, Angelo's childhood friend. When we got married, this girl caused quite a stir. Now, it seems she's done me a big favor. Sure enough, on our wedding anniversary, Angelo was absent, and the headline #Goo Corporation CEO Angelo spends night with popular singer Blanca #hit the news. I made numerous fake calls to him, all unanswered. As expected, I sent Angelo an edited text message. I believe you're not serious. You're just playing around, right? Come home as soon as you see this. Are you really going to stay with that woman? Putting down the phone, I swirled the wine in my glass and took a sip. The wine had breathed just right. The dining table was set for a feast for one. I hadn't prepared his portion at all. This self-proclaimed clever, self-righteous hypocritical scumbag. He doesn't understand the saying, cleverness can backfire, and he's incapable of redemption. So, he will pay the price. In the past 2 days, I've slept soundly, even more peacefully than when we were in love. Judging the time to be about right, I set off for Blanca's neighborhood in the early morning. After waiting downstairs for a while, Angelo's Range Rover indeed drove out of the complex. My heart, already numb and cold, ached for a moment, but I smiled. This is good. I don't have to feel guilty, nor do I need to hold back. I walked straight to the delivery station. The delivery guy was a chivalrous person. Upon hearing my story, he immediately pounded his chest and offered to help. He took the fake package I prepared upstairs, and soon came back, excitedly recounting his heroic deeds. I said it was a valuable package that had to be signed for in person, unless she proved their relationship in the recipient column. And guess what? The mistress immediately signed. She even guaranteed they were married. How shameless! He vowed indignantly to testify in court. No amount of money can allow one to have 2 wives. I thanked him profusely, and he waved goodbye from a distance as I left the complex. I wiped away the tears that almost overflowed. There are still good people in this world. Today, with the key evidence of bigamy in hand, I can initiate legal proceedings. I looked up at the sky. It was rare to see such a blue, clear sky in winter. I took a deep breath. How wonderful. I am about to be free. Chapter 12. I didn't expect Blanca to show up at my door. She stood with her hands on her hips, posing like a young lady, looking down at me. Sister, you should be sensible. After all, love doesn't care about who comes first. The unloved one is the third party. I couldn't help but laugh. What kind of taste does Angelo have? He couldn't even find someone with brains. Love may not care about who comes first, but it does care about propriety and decency. I watched as her face turned red, speaking each word clearly. Moreover, you know better than I do whether Angelo truly loves you. Her body trembled slightly. I laughed at myself. So, even she knew, to some extent, what kind of person Angelo was. I was the only one kept in the dark from beginning to end. I stood up and stepped closer to her. You've known Angelo since you were young. You should know better what kind of person he is. If you can persuade him to divorce, I would be more than willing. Her eyes began to fill with tears. avoiding my gaze. Blanca, you still have a bright future ahead of you. Are you really willing to give up the path your parents painstakingly paved for you, just to be his possession? She didn't answer. After a long time, she looked up, her eyes filled with tears. I knew I couldn't win against you. I laughed in exasperation. I wasn't advising her out of pity, but to prevent another girl from falling into his trap. If I were intent on competing with her, would I need to waste my breath? I ignored her and walked past her. You turned him down so many times, yet he still ended up with you. I stopped. Turned him down? I never rejected Angelo. Logic told me not to pay attention, that completing the divorce was more important, but my gut told me something was amiss. I turned back. She realized she had slipped up and tried to leave, but I grabbed her. Explain yourself. She cried out in pain, but under my persistent questioning, she finally spoke the truth. Stammering, it's just, when we were in elementary school, I secretly threw away a lot of the love letters Angie wrote to you. He always thought you rejected him, he even hated you for a while, but you two still ended up together. I couldn't believe it and confirmed again. You were in elementary school? Angelo was in his first year of middle school. A horrifying realization hit me. My mind was in turmoil, and all the blood in my body rushed to my head. Blood trickled from my nose, and a buzzing sound filled my ears. Terror ravaged my body like a storm. Every cell shrank in fear, and the dark night from years ago consumed me. Blanca's exclamation was faint in my ears. My illness flared up violently. I curled up in the corner, sobbing silently. I thought that desperate night was my first encounter with Angelo, but that year, Angelo was in his second year of middle school. Instinct told me I had uncovered a terrifying truth. The brutal reality assaulted my nerves. The incident I experienced. It probably wasn't an accident. So that's how it was. A mentally unstable vagrant suddenly found family members and managed to produce a 200,000 yuan compensation. A teenage boy dared to rush into an alley alone to stop an assailant's actions. Cold, salty bitterness mixed with burning hatred welled up in my heart. Angelo, you must be very proud. All these years, watching your perfect creation worship you as a god. When I regained consciousness, Blanca was holding on to me, crying pitifully. I won't fight with you for Angie. Don't die. Please don't die. I don't want to go to jail. Sob. I sighed. You're crushing my arm. Seeing me recover, she thanked heaven and earth, thanking everyone from her grandparents to her parents. This girl didn't seem very bright. I changed my mind. This divorce. I'll postpone it a bit. Chapter 13. I dialed Angelo's number. I forced myself to sound tearful, expressing how much I missed him. I know I was wrong. Angie, please come back. I said I would finish this novel and promise never to write again. He truly believed I was yielding and smoothly moved back home. I acted coy and asked him to take me on a trip to the Tibetan area. Angelo, I want to see the real Qinghai Lake. My eyes held a dark meaning but only the two of us understood. He hugged me, his face full of satisfaction, barely able to hide his smugness. All right. As a reward for my Moni knowing her mistake and correcting it, it seemed he also remembered that card. Be a good girl, and we'll fly to Qinghai tomorrow. He ruffled my hair as he used to, but I subtly avoided his touch. He buried his head in my neck, missing the deep-seated hatred in my eyes. Angelo, do you know what it feels like to have fear invade your body, tearing everything apart? It's okay if you don't. You'll soon know how terrifying that abyss is. Will you be as scared as I was? I smiled cruelly. Those who wrong me will be pierced by 1,000 arrows. Chapter 14. The sky in the Tibetan region is indeed bluer. Clear streams meander at our feet. Blue poppies with slender stems swayed in the high-altitude wind, their scattered blue blooms lining the stream at an elevation of 5,000 meters. I picked one and tucked it into my hair. My cheeks were flushed from the altitude sickness, making me look like the shy girl from years ago. He seemed a bit dazed, walking closer to me and stroking my cheek. What flower is this? His eyes sparkled with amazement. Blue poppy. It symbolizes eternal love. There's a story about it among the Tibetans. I lied. The green poppy's meaning is resilience, an indomitable, resilient life that cannot be destroyed. I made up a thrilling love story, and he listened intently. In the end, the girl with the blue poppy and the boy who drank the holy water would never be separated. I dipped my fingers into the mountain stream. Its water clear to the bottom. The so-called holy mountain and sacred water refer to the Ganges Mountains and the South Asian rivers born from its snow peaks. This stream is likely one of their tributaries. I looked up at him, sunlight dancing on the stones, casting shimmering reflections on my lips. He suddenly leaned down, giving me a passionate kiss. Then, using my hand, he scooped up a handful of stream water and drank it all. We will never be separated either. I smiled, a genuine, bright smile. Slowly, I pinned another green poppy onto his collar. Do you like it? It's a gift from me. He didn't catch my hidden meaning. Anything from Moni. I'll like. He wrapped his arm around me, clearly pleased. Really? Angelo, I hope you do like it. The Tibetan herders never dare to drink unfiltered spring water, and this mountain stream's upper reaches run through a pasture. That night, I left him behind and flew back alone. I only left a single text message. The scriptwriting deadline was approaching, and I sent Angelo a message. The scriptwriting task deadline is near. I'm sorry. I lied to you. I can't abandon my career. I could already imagine Angelo's frantic anger when he woke up. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. It was time to close the net. As expected, Director Wang received a submission. It was the manuscript he had stolen. I got word that he had bribed many media outlets. Tomorrow's trending topics would definitely include me. Hashtag rising star author Monica accused of plagiarism. Once this news broke, I would never be able to stir up any waves again. I would have to beg for his forgiveness and obediently become his plaything. But he forgot one thing. Whose domain is the news industry? I made a call. The net is closed. Almost overnight. At a glance, 4 or 5 of the top 10 trending topics were about Angelo. Hashtag Goo Corporation CEO plagiarizes wife's work. Hashtag Goo Corporation president arrested for bigamy. Hashtag Goo Corporation president Angelo faced with wife murder plot charges. Hashtag Goo Corporation heir faced with over 20-year sentence. I put down my phone. It's not over yet. Angelo, what you owe me is far more than this. How does it feel to have your soul and body shattered together? I watched the video of Angelo being interviewed. I had never seen him look so disheveled. Watching his swollen face and violent coughing, I laughed with satisfaction. Echinococcus, also known as hydatid disease or worm cancer. The chances of infection are very high if one drinks raw water in the pasture areas. With proper treatment, most echinococcus cases are not fatal, but for the coming decades, he will have to endure its torment until he is completely destroyed. This is good. Sorry means nothing. You have to experience all the pain I have endured for it to count as an apology. The interview was playing the part where he, with bloodshot eyes, begged the media for one more meeting with me. I turned off the screen. It's better this way. To put a full stop to the years of love and hatred. Chapter 15. I donned the brightest outfit I've worn in years, painting my lips with the boldest, most striking red. Angelo, now in prison garb, had lost all his dignified elegance, looking disheveled and forlorn. His eyes, red with anger, lunged toward the partition glass in the visitation room, only to be restrained by the guards. I sat serenely on the other side of the glass, quietly observing his miserable state, just as he had once observed me lying on the hospital bed, observing his perfect creation. I spoke first. Do you like it? His pupils dilated, showing a look of hurt and disbelief. You knew that water was undrinkable? Instead of answering, I laughed. As I laughed, tears began to fall. Say something. Why did you do this to me? Moni, speak. He stood up, pounding on the glass, only to be pulled back by the guards. What did I do wrong? How dare you do this to me? Don't you know that with a snap of my fingers, Goo Corporation's legal team can? I know everything. My clasped hands turned white at the knuckles as I fought the urge to scream, gently interrupting him word by word. 200,000. Quite a sum, isn't it? He froze. I think he knew what I was referring to. Moni, it's not what you think. It's not. He seemed to lose all strength, slowly collapsing to his knees in front of the glass. with a glimmer of hope mixed with despair, his voice hoarse as he pleaded. I was wrong. I was too young then. I was out of my mind. He looked like a child who had made a mistake, crying and begging for forgiveness while I remained expressionless. Please, forgive me. I'll atone. I'll stay here and never leave. Just don't abandon me. I just love you too much. His voice broke, tears streaming down, incoherent. I could see he was truly panicking. Perhaps he really did love me, but his love was possessive, controlling, a love that would destroy the mind and body of his beloved just to keep her close. Such twisted love, I cannot accept. I laughed bitterly in anger. This is what you call love? Hurting me, destroying me, controlling me? I couldn't hold back any longer. Trembling with rage and tears, I shouted hoarsely. I am a person, a living, breathing person, not an object, not your canary. He opened his mouth, emitting a sound like a wounded animal's whimper, but he could no longer argue with me. I don't know if a twisted person can recognize their own distorted emotions, but he at least understood that he would never be forgiven. I stood up lightly, no longer sparing him a glance. He destroyed my body, and I have repaid him 100-fold. The love he deceitfully gained has turned into a blade piercing his heart. It's time to end this. Angelo. I turned my back to him and spoke softly. He looked up, his face ashen, pleading eyes fixed on me. I know Goo Corporation doesn't lack top-notch lawyers and doctors. These charges and illnesses might not hold you down. So when you get out, I paused, seeing a glimmer of hope light up in his eyes. If you get out, I hope you'll cooperate with the divorce. If you don't, then atone for your sins behind bars. I watched as that glimmer of hope slowly extinguished. We're even. Chapter 16. The enthusiasm from everyone at the newspaper made me feel a bit awkward. My desk was still vacant. The computer screen left exactly as it was when I left. Welcome back. Editor-in-Chief Lynn smiled and extended her hand to me. My eyes instantly welled up. The familiar, warm atmosphere embraced me. I knew then that I didn't want a warm cage. This is the sky that belongs to an eagle. The movie Green Poppy, a collaboration with director Wong, was soon released. The online response was very positive. It's like an epic of the resilient women in the mountains. The green poppy symbolizes resilient life. Just like the heroine, Little Green Poppy. President Goo should see this movie and see what kind of work he almost destroyed. But Angelo wouldn't see it. On a sunny afternoon, like any other day, I received a call from the community office. I was stunned for a moment. Dropping my phone, I stood there in shock until I heard the voice on the other end say, "Our condolences. Angelo was gone. A hydatid cyst had ruptured, leading to severe anaphylactic shock and peritonitis. By the time he was taken to the hospital, it was already too late. They said he had violently struck his own abdomen, causing the cyst to rupture. The call was because, in his will, I was named the sole heir to his entire estate. In my daze, I touched my face, feeling the wet, cold tears. An indescribable emotion flooded my chest. After all, a proud and arrogant person like him wouldn't allow himself to decline, living without dignity. This was his choice. In the end, I laughed. I let go of over 10 years of accumulated love and hate. For me, for him, and for my new life. Head held high, I took a deep breath and looked out the window. Spring had arrived. Angelo, rest in peace. With everything settled, I gathered my courage and retrieved a number from my contacts. I heard that after the incident years ago, my uncle and aunt had divorced. My aunt remarried with a significant compensation but reportedly didn't live well in her new family. Her new husband was abusive, breaking her leg so badly she didn't dare go to the hospital, leaving her with a permanent limp. My uncle, feeling ashamed to face me, moved away. He only sent me money during the holidays, but I could never reach him. I knew he was still blaming himself, but I didn't blame him. I sent a text message to that number. I'm divorced. As expected, the number that had been silent for over a decade called back immediately. Moni, that bastard bullied you? Don't be afraid. Come back to Uncle's house. The familiar dialect brought tears to my eyes. Don't cry. Oh my. Over the years, Whether I graduated from college, got married, or published a new work, he never answered my calls or replied to my messages. But upon hearing that my marriage had broken down and I was homeless, he didn't hesitate to accept me, ready to protect me with his now less sturdy back. No, actually, I wiped my tears. I didn't get divorced. I'm widowed. There was silence on the other end. I teased him. Can you still take me in? Yes, yes. You can stay or run away. Whatever you need. I laughed. You see, true family loves you unconditionally. Lies and harm are not love. Love is love. Love is just love.